There are good selection headaches all throughout this Lions squad, but in this video, I'm going to focus on the number 3 jersey, and I'll tell you who I think is the front runner to wear it in the first test in just 18 days' time. And spoiler alert, it's probably not who you think. Hello amateurs, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be here with you throughout the Lions series and beyond, so hit subscribe to follow along. Okay, let's talk about the runners and riders. Pre-tour, everybody's favourite, I think, pending fitness, was Ty Furlong. But of course, I mentioned it there, he has been injured. He has spent a fair bit of time on the sidelines recently. And based on his first outing against the Western Force, I think it's fair to say that he's not near his best. He got around, he did a few bits and pieces, but the scrum creaked at times. He showed his experience a few times as well. But this is not the Ty Furlong that we know and love. His heights are so high and he's not really getting close to that at this moment. And while we're talking about height, I feel like out of all the 3 tightheads on this trip, he's the one that scrums a little bit higher. And I feel like that could be a slight weakness. We'll come back to that later. That being said, I think when all the chips are down, when everybody retires, all these 3 guys, I think Ty Furlong will have the biggest legacy in this game. I think his reputation will be the highest. But is that important right now? Next in line, okay, next man, Finlay Bealham, on tour as a replacement for Xander Fagerson. Now, if you've heard me talk about Bealham before, you'll know I think he is technically so good. He manages to get a flat back, very low to the ground, technically superb as a tight head. He's also pretty mobile, he gets about, but I'd describe his loose game as efficient. Like, you don't see the big plays too often in terms of big tackles or big carries, but he gets through a lot of work and he makes those tackles very sharply, which presents jackal opportunities. And another thing in his favour, as far as I'm concerned, was he was the playmaker in my favourite bit of international rugby from 2024, and any excuse to show that bit again. Remarkable. And then lastly, Will Stewart, and he has really been fulfilling the promise that's been building for years. He's always had the frame. He's scrummed at times in periods where you go, that's it, that's what you should be doing. But this year, he's been consistent. He's contributed around the park a lot, which has always been a strength of his. Like his footwork before contact, he makes big hits as a tackler, and he started every game for England in the Six Nations. So he has had a really strong year. All 3, obviously, excellent players. All 3 are worthy of playing in a test match for the Lions, in my opinion. So what else is important? And here's where I think a real key part of this discussion when it comes to selection might be the opposition. Man on man, who are they going to be facing? And the likely starting loosehead for Australia is big, bad Angus Bell, one of the very best looseheads in the world, and he's a remarkable talent in the loose. His carrying at Twickenham last year was probably one of the best carrying games by a prop in international rugby that I can remember. However, he's 6'4". He's a very tall man for a loosehead prop, and that brings with it challenges. And I know, because I was a loosehead prop and I was also quite tall for a loosehead prop. I've got some clips here to illustrate what I mean. So this first one is against England, and as you can see, he likes to scrummage high and wide because that is the way you can keep your body shape best as a tall loosehead prop. However, the downside is that if you lose your inside shoulder, then you end up standing up, and that is a very easy penalty for a referee to give. We look at the second scrum against England again from last year, and he managed to stay engaged this time, but look in the bend of his back there. 1, that's really uncomfortable. And 2, you see as the pressure comes on from behind, his hips go up. Basically, none of the drive from people behind him in the scrum is going forward. It's all ending up going upwards, which means he's completely depowered. And I've got another couple of clips here as well from the same series, this one against Wales. And again, high and wide, ending up standing up in the scrum. It's an easy penalty for referees to give, so easy. And the second one, again, similar to the England game, he's been pinged for standing up. This time, he's staying engaged and he's trying to stay low. But the disadvantage of being that long, that tall, is that you're very susceptible to collapsing and going down. And that's what happens in this scrum against Archie Griffin. And this is no disrespect to Archie Griffin, but he's third choice at Bath. behind two very good tight heads, of course, but he doesn't have that wealth of experience. You know, he's not a genuine top-line tight head. So if Angus Bell is struggling there, what could these Lions tight heads do to him? Okay, so with all that in mind, what do I think? Another factor, I think that Will Stewart is really adept off the bench. I think that he does that a lot for Bath. Obviously, with Thomas du Toit being in the same squad and being maybe the best tight head in the world. I think it's a talent, I think it's a skill, and I think it's something that you learn how to do well. And I think he has done over the years, in spite of starting most games for England this year. And in fact, if you think about Stewart's strengths, they might be better used later in the game where it's a little bit more space, a little bit more room, and those dynamic carries, the footwork and the big tackles might be better used then. Let's talk about Finlay Beelam's technical excellence, because I think, to be fair, I think most these three props, I think all of them would do a decent job against Angus Bell. But I think Beelam, being technically the most excellent, getting that point of impact so low and his back so flat, I would back him to get scrum penalties for the Lions against Angus Bell. Also, another factor, I believe that Ellis Genge is currently leading the charge for the Lucid jersey. And those two have literally been joined at the hip on tour. Well, not literally. That's an incorrect use of that word. But it's a proper bromance. And what energy would that give to both of them if they're starting that first test together? I think there's energy in that. And I think it's something that could influence selection. I genuinely do, because these connections are important. They mean a lot on a rugby pitch. And those two, go and watch the behind the scenes stuff on YouTube for the Lions. Those two have done some great content this week. So with that in mind, I believe unless Ty Furlong finds his form in the next game and comes through and has an absolute stormer, I believe Beelam will start the first test, and I believe Stewart will be on the bench. And there's been some precedents for this kind of thing in Lions history. Think back to 1997, Jason Leonard entered that tour as, without doubt, the number one prop in that Lions squad and missed out on starting selection to Tom Smith and Paul Wallace. And actually, for the very same reasons that I'm using here, because those two props were smaller, they were more compact, they were harder to get a grip on for the massive South Africans they were playing against. Leonard obviously was absolutely applauded or held up on a pedestal almost by Sir Ian McGeechan, and how he dealt with that and how he still contributed to the team and made sure Tom Smith and Paul Wallace were as well prepared as they could be. One of the, big Lions moments. Another precedent, this one didn't go quite so well, was Phil Vickery in 2009. He was recovering from injuries. He was held back almost on tour for the Test series. And well, we all know what happened against the Beast there in South Africa. So, not having been selected for the original squad, could Finlay Beelam be this tour's Test starting bolter? I think so, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Give this video a thumbs up while you're down there. If you don't mind, it helps other great rugby fans just like you find them. And you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. And do not forget to get out and play.